Hey everyone, it's Damien here, Sleepy Reader. This morning, on the day that I'm filming this, and it's nighttime now, this morning, Friday morning, DC announced a whole bunch of changes to their line of comics happening after the Convergence event. In fact, I think they might even be dubbing it Divergence, which is kind of clever. At least I kind of like that idea. They quote Dan Didio saying, "In this new era of storytelling, story will trump continuity as we continue to empower creators to tell the best stories in the industry." And I couldn't help but flash back to my reading, one of my more interesting reads of the past week, of last week, the Multiversity Guidebook, part of Grant Morrison's sort of bizarre, multi-textual, metatextual, encompassing of all things DC in his Multiversity series, which is made up of a series of number one issues, including this guidebook is the number one issue of the guidebook. And what struck me most about this guidebook when I read it, and I read large portions of it with my daughter, especially all the entries of all the different Earths. She was very tickled by the idea of all these multiple Earths and these multiple versions of DC's own reality, as are many of us. Anyway, it seemed extra fun to me when reading it with her. And the thing I was struck most about this reading experience, both reading all the actual guidebook to all these Earths, plus the comics that surrounded it, which was a story about Kamandi, if it could really be called a story, but a piece with Kamandi discovering some parts of the realities of this universe, and then another piece with two alternate Batmans meeting each other. Not Batmite as you might think at first, but a childlike version of Dick Grayson, who is dressing as Batman, comes from a world of all children, and this other armored Batman that comes from a decimated post-apocalypse kind of world. Anyway, those all served the guidebook idea and were full of this wonderful reading of the comic book, which, you know, the idea of the comic book has kept appearing in all the multiversity books, but it really was played out best in this issue, where everything someone was looking at literally was the next part of the comic that you were going to read. So it's the comic book within the comic book within the comic book within the comic book. Anyway, what struck me about all of this was just how much fun it was. And reading this, last week with my daughter, I was thinking, why can't all of the DC comic books be this fun? Why can't a lot of them be fun? Why can't they just focus on all these? There's so many different fun ideas here. They don't fit together in one universe, but they inhabit multiple universes, multiple worlds of story, as Morrison makes very clear in this book that it's a universe powered by narrative. He even has a very clever cosmology that he has Kamandi discover, that there was this perfection, this perfect whiteness, so to speak, the void, you might say, of purity, and then a flaw appeared, as it does both in religion and in physics. Things just seem to come out of the vacuum. But in this case, the flaw is the creator of story, the creator of narrative, the creator of conflict. And so, and that creates, the conflicts create, viewers, witnesses, readers like us, to witness the conflicts. And there's this weird relationship between the monitors and the reality that they monitor. Anyway, all of that was good fun. And as I said, so one of my big thoughts on this is, why can't we just have more fun with comics? Too much of this serious continuity. And then it seems like, in a way, that's what DC has decided at the very time. I almost imagine that they were reading these comics before we were, that the top people at DC may have, in part, one of their influences might have been reading this Multiplicity Guidebook and saying, come on, let's just have fun. Let's explore the different universes. And one tiny bit of evidence for that is, now I probably won't be able to find it, is they have announced one of the 24 new comics that they're going to put out is Prez. And they gave Prez his own universe here. Here it is, Earth 47. And the home of the psychedelic champions of the Love Syndicate of Dreamworld, led by Sunshine Superman, and including the Shooting Star, Speed Freak, Magic Lantern, Brother Power the Geek. The Love Syndicate is financed through the immortal teenage president Prez Rickard. All is groovy. So there is Prez, and those in the know who really followed comics of the 70s know that Prez appeared in 4 issues in the mid-70s, and the idea was they lowered the voting age in the U.S. so that you could, and lowered the age that you could be president, so that a teenager was voted in president of the United States, because, the baby boom and everything, I guess, so it was an exaggeration of the fears or the excitement of the baby boom period, when the baby boomers seemed to be taking over everything. Sorry for bumping my camera. I was trying to get it to focus on Prez. Anywho, that's really kind of a thin connection there. But it seems funny that, this is a pretty obscure character, and that I feel that they were at least inspired by Grant Morrison to bring him back at this juncture. And so there's a Bizarro world in here, and we are going to have a Bizarro comic book, a miniseries. We're going to have a Batmite comic book. I don't think the Batmite world is actually covered in all of these Earths, but I could be wrong. It might fit into the cosmology that he gives us in the big map. Where did the big map go? No, I've lost it. Here it is. At first, this just looks like a bunch of gobbledygook, but I read it over very carefully, reading all of this fine print here, the multiversal vibrational realms, and so the 52 Earths or universes that contain Earth are in the middle, contained within here, and then these are outer layers around it. And Morrison used all of this, found a way to make all of the things ever, or most of the things ever created in the DC Comics world and the Vertigo comic world, all connected by having, for instance, these realms here. Up here is Dream, and down here is Nightmare. So that includes a lot of the Vertigo Neil Gaiman stuff in Dream and Nightmare. And he's got Heaven and Hell, because in lots of DC comics we have heaven and hell. We have things like heaven and hell. We have hell-like regions and heaven-like regions and different versions of heaven. And so all of that is contained within here and his descriptions of it. And he's got the new Genesis and Apocalypse. And so all of these things, how could all these gods and stuff exist as part of one universe or multiverse? Well, he's got it all figured out. So maybe somewhere in here is where Batmite lives? I don't know. But seeing that they're doing Batmite, and I'm not very excited at all about Batmite in particular. He's always been a very annoying character, seemingly a stand-in for the most annoying childlike fantasy. But maybe someone could do something interesting with Batmite. Grant Morrison himself did some interesting stuff with Bizarro in 2 issues, Bizarro and Bizarro World, in 2 issues of the All-Star Superman. So that leads me to some hope that there could be some fun with Bizarro. And I think already, the New 52, when it started, they really wanted a tight continuity, although they did a lot of missteps and blunders that made that very hard on themselves. But in the past year, it seems like they've loosened up on that continuity with things like Batgirl and with, which I also wasn't happy about, actually. Or with Harley Quinn. I don't think the Harley Quinn of her own series matches up that much with other Harley Quinns that we see in the New 52. So this sense of loosening and exploring the fun of all the different worlds seems to be at least a part of this Divergence. And they're no longer tagging everything with the New 52, and they're not going to try to have 52 comics. So it's a nice loosening up. Another one that might kind of tie into this multiversity kind of idea is one called Mystic You, which some people have speculated online will involve the guy from the Books of Magic who appeared in Justice League Dark. I'm now forgetting his name. Other interesting things already kind of growing were, for instance, the Justice League 3000, which was slowly revealed not to be in the New 52 universe, but to be in the old 52 universe, or whatever you want to call it, off in its own universe. And that's continuing as Justice League 3001. So I'm wondering if a similar kind of thing will be done with Omega Men. In my memory of the Omega Men, they were thousands of years in the future and weren't very closely connected with the DC continuity, although Lobo came out of that. So my Omega Men knowledge is incomplete. But I'm kind of excited about the idea of the Omega Men. And they're going to be written by Tom King, who's the co-writer on one of my favorite DC books, Grayson. So that seems very promising. I have no idea the person who writes Prez is named Mark Russell and the artist Ben Caldwell. I don't know those creators. The image I saw of Prez looked like it was a teenage girl. So that could be interesting. I don't know if they'll try to tie it in with the long gone hippie days that it came out of, but who knows. So I'm sure these things all happen in cycles, don't they? I mean, DC has not always had a tight continuity, and then at times it's gone to a tight continuity. In a way, I wonder if Marvel, which has developed kind of a loose continuity in a way, and with so much time travel and everything else, if after their War World they'll bring things back to a tighter continuity. I don't know. Probably not. I really don't know enough about that. Were there any, some of these others might exist outside of the regular universe. It'll be interesting to see whether Constantine the Hellblazer, which is going back to more of an indie feel with Ming Doyle writing it and Riley Rosmo doing the art, it'll be interesting to see if that takes place tightly within the continuity of the DC universe, or if they'll let Constantine go and let him be more off in his own universe, so to speak. There's a series by Garth Ennis, Section 8. I don't know if that will have much to do with the DC universe. They're talking about a new Batman Beyond. I think they have a digital Batman Beyond already. Maybe that's ended. Will this Batman Beyond be more linked to the DC universe now? Since it was announced along with all this other stuff. Martian Manhunter. Yeah, so that's just a little theory about the DC universe becoming more of a multiversity, which is ironic because if they're having a thing where universes collide, I guess the universes will have to separate out again. I am really sad, actually, that the Peter Tomasi Batman and Robin seems to be going away. It's going to be replaced by 2 Robin books, but neither of which are written by Peter Tomasi. And I feel this is the one thing about all these announcements that bothers me, because I loved the Batman and Robin relationship, and then they killed off Robin, and then they took nearly 2 years to bring Robin back, and Peter Tomasi did it very well. He earned the bringing back of Robin. It was kind of one of the best bringing backs of a character that I'm familiar with. And now there's that Batman and Robin relationship to play with again, which he was such an expert at playing with. So after all this time, finally he and his partner Patrick Gleason are again working with that wonderful dynamic of Batman and his difficult son Damian. And now it's going to end in a few more issues. Now, granted, there's going to be a series written and drawn by Patrick Gleason, and clearly Gleason has his... I don't know anything about Gleason as a writer, but he has a lot of experience with Damian, or the version of Damian that I like. But I'm still uneasy about how that's going to work out, and whether that's at all going to be a fitting replacement. So it's really sort of the amount of time we've invested in getting that good Batman and Robin back, that Batman and Damian Batman and Robin back, to only have it peter out, no play on Pete Tomasi, peter out so quickly afterwards. Other than that, I'm pretty interested. I have to say there was something about the beginning of the New 52, its odd corners, that I really liked, that was drawing upon the Vertigo world. And it did all have kind of a dark tone to it. And although there was fun in it too. I'm talking about things like Resurrection Man and I, Vampire and Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, and a number of others. And it seems like there's not going to be anything like that here. The odd bits are more going to be on the fun side. They're going to be more like the spirit of multiplicity here. Or multiversity, I keep calling it multiplicity. Of course, multiversity includes some very serious stuff, but it does seem to shine a light on the fun stuff. But it does include some serious things, such as the Charlton hero universe. I don't think we're seeing a return to some Charlton comics. We are seeing an individual from the Wildstorm universe get his own comic. I'm not really looking forward to that too much, because I feel like the Midnighter by himself is not that interesting. I think he was an interesting character as part of a team when he was on Stormwatch. But by himself, less interesting character. Then he's too much of a Batman or something. So yeah. It'll be interesting to see, where the DC universe goes from here. Of course, sales have a lot to do with it, and I think fears about losing the market share to the indie books, and the desire to get the perceived new audience that's coming to comics, a younger and more diverse in gender and possibly race. I think there's always been a broad diversity in terms of race in the comic readership, if not in the comic book creators. I think lots of African Americans have been steady comic book readers all their lives, for instance, and no doubt lots of Hispanics and other groups. But for whatever reason, the confluence of things have made the comic book community the professional community more aware of some of their shortcomings there. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes next, comes of that. Yeah, so exciting times, fun stuff. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.